Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new show called Retro Remix. My name is Killjoy and I am joined by the one, the only Mr. Fruity Sama. How's it going, good sir?
Hey, not bad, not bad. So, I had a really good idea that since me and Killjoy do a lot of music and have a lot of experience of performing, why don't we do a video series where we take video game music and then remix it and reimagine it to what we want to do, and then share with you guys, and to kill two birds with one stone. Our love for music and our love for video games.
And it's also kind of nice because it means it kind of gives us a kick up the ass to keep practicing and doing stuff like that while making these tracks.
Experiencing new genres and thinking of new ways to interpret music. So the idea as the ground rules for this is that each time we'll choose one game. Technically we chose two games this time.
Yeah.
But, it's early days. We're still getting used to what we're doing. And the idea is we'll either do a cover or we'll do a reimagining, or then we'll do something inspired by that game, which is not based on the pre-existing music of that game, if that makes sense. So it's either going to be a new track we create ourselves, or a cover, or a reimagining into a different genre, so slightly different arrangement of the music.
Yep.
So we've kind of got that entire spectrum on this episode, which has kind of worked out quite well as a beginning episode, because I've done pretty much a straight cover, and you've done a reimagining of Sonic. So
yeah, I kind of gone for a reimagining. Basically, I decided, being the big fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog music, we were originally meant to be doing the first game, but I love Chemical Plant Zone so much that my track is heavily inspired by Chemical Plant Zone, and I guess it would be kind of like my version of it. It's technically called Mech Factory. It's meant to be very inspired by it. You can hear it in the track when we hear it, those kind of things. But I was like, you know what? I love that track so much, and I was listening to it, and I was like, you know what? I want to do something in the style of. So that's what I'm going for.
Yeah. Cool. And so doing Sonic. I chose the Starlight Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 1. I nearly said the wrong name after trying to make sure I definitely looked that up and said it's going to be that. So luckily they're also written both by the same person.
Yes.
So just to shed a bit of credit to a guy who definitely deserves it, we got the composer Masa, or his full name Nakamura Masota. I believe that's how you say it. My inner weeb is failing. I need to watch more anime to get the pronunciations back. But yeah, he's the man who composed all the music for Sonic 1 and 2. And he was in a band before. He's a bassist, so he's cool. And if you're into anime, he's married to the singer from High and Mighty Color, which they did a Bleach opening. And I think they did another opening, or maybe it's two Bleach openings. I can't remember, but they're a fairly big band. They're pretty cool. They're kind of Evanescence-y. But yeah, that's a bit about him.
Yeah,
cool.
This guy has done a lot of stuff. He's actually been audio supervisor on a ton of things. I knew the name because I believe he does some stuff in Smash, or at least he's credited in Smash. So this guy's done a lot of work on various stuff and helped out on audio and all kinds of games. But his people know him from. I believe he did the first two or first three Sonic games, and then
he didn't do the. It's a bit controversial. So in the Sonic Hedgehog 3.
Yeah.
He agreed to do it, but there was financial disagreements with Sega, and they led to dropping him and then using in-house music and Michael Jackson's team, I guess.
Yeah.
So they didn't use him in the end, but he did do a remixed version of the end theme or something. So he did do a thing connected to it, but he started working on it, then dropped.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, what do we want to hear first? Do we want to hear the cover, or do we want to hear the original track first?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
This is my idea.
Yeah. No worries.
So before we play that, I guess I'll just do a bit of talking about my mindset going into it.
You crack on.
So originally, I had to do Starlight Zone because Killjoy's not much of a fan of it, and I really like it, so it had to be Starlight Zone. It could be anything else. Though Metropolis was pretty close. No, not Metropolis.
Springyard. Scrap Brain, yeah.
Scrap Brain was very close because that music is great. But so originally I started composing this for like a free-voiced kind of Rage Against the Machine kind of band, because like the melody kind of works quite well with that. But then I realised it went too far away from the original song. It didn't feel like Starlight still. It's just using the melody from it, because it's very much like da 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 da. It's like, it's very like Bulls on Parade or something like that. You can kind of got the phrasing from that, but it doesn't really feel. Didn't feel still like Starlight Zone afterwards. So I went for just doing a more of a straight cover. Did a few tweaks to the melody, but it's more of just like I went for like a 70s disco kind of vibe and tried to make it feel like it's from the 70s with a lot of like compression and like trying to overdrive it, try to give it some more like warmth to the sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my idea. So I guess now we'll have a listen.
Have a little listen.
Yeah.
Let's get the headphones on. Right. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
That's where it would loop. After the intro section.
Just realised the VLC does have a bit of a wobbly, so what I'll do when I put the other track on, I'll play it, stop it, and drag it back. Don't know why it always seems to cut off.
I mean, you can always just chop it and just put the sound file anyway when you're doing it.
But what we will do is have it so that all these tracks will be single on their own after this episode's gone up. So you'll get to hear the episode, get to hear us talk about it.
Yeah.
But then I will also upload them separately.
Especially when, because Sonic music is obviously less than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But if we're doing like, I don't know, Halo or something, it'd probably be more like a 5-7 minute song. So yeah, we probably won't play the full one in this, just to cut down on length. But yeah, that was my music. It sounds a lot like, have you ever listened to the Star Wars Disco album? It sounds a lot like that, where they just put like a disco beat underneath the Imperial March and stuff. It just sounds like that.
I really like the bit that goes that sound is really like I don't know what you used for it, but I really like that sound on it, because it's like, alright, this gives me feels of the actual game.
Yeah, it's like a lot of clav. So like, there's like 2 clavs, 2 like lead squarey synths, and then there's also like a music box, do like the ding ding ding, which sounds really quite nice on top. And like, the bass guitar, which I originally was using, I ended up it's kind of just become the synth line that was like mirroring it. There's a lot of like obviously doubling it to try and make it feel really full, with like a lot of disco music feels very full. So a lot of EQing to try and like give space to everything.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I like it. It's a nice set of instruments used there, because it sounds like Starlight Zone, obviously, but it's kind of like it's almost like what Starlight Zone would probably sound like if it wasn't on that hardware. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of like sounds and stuff now, Because obviously if you listen to the original, it's obviously very bit crushed and things because of the hardware and what they were using at the time, but like this is quite a nice, like almost like midied up version of it with these different
like
instruments and
very little like actual percussion as well. Listen to the song, a lot of it's just hi-hat.
Yeah.
Like, there isn't really like any kind of beat underneath.
Absolutely.
And like trying to rejiggy some of like the bass parts to try and like make it feel the same, but like a live band's playing it. It's kind of what I was going for. So it's very much like, this sounds like a disco song. Let's make it into a disco song.
Yeah. No, it's a the thing with Starlight Zone. Like I've never have much love for it because it always sounds quite flat. But what you've done there is you've given it a bit more oomph to push the track along. Because the thing is, the melody,
it's also like almost painfully sweet.
Yeah,
like it's so like sappy and like just like optimistic and like happy. It's like it feels kind of weird. So I kind of just doubled down on that though. But like, adding some of the bottom end on it, which obviously wasn't on like the original one, I think kind of helps make it feel a bit less like it should be like in Greece or like a kind of like musical almost.
It's an interesting track because like a lot of the music, like when you think of certain pieces of music usually from Sonic, they very much stand on their own with that particular level. Like, you know, you think when you hear Green Hill, you think you imagine that sort of stuff. Starlight Zone is quite a minimalistic stage anyway, so I think that's kind of like when I hear the music, I'm like, it doesn't give me the same sort of oomph normally like a lot of the other tracks do, but it's also meant to be that way because it's like there's not a lot going on in the level. It's more like about movement and going around. Like,
it's a really weird level. It's like, even as a kid, I think I got this in like 94. I think I got this, maybe 93. I can't remember when I got the Sega Mega Drive, but yeah, a long time ago. And like even then, I found it kind of weird because it's like it's quite near the end of the game. It doesn't have that kind of menacing, darker vibes. Like most games start with like the countryside. And you go like into the city, then you go into like the enemy's base, and you know you kind of follow like a progression of like, oh, this is all happy, this is all like Green Hill Zone, and then it goes like really dark. But then like Starlight Zone's actually quite a chill zone. There's not many enemies either. The only real enemies, the ones that kind of self-destruct, or like the ones with like the barbs spinning around them.
Yeah.
Like it's a real chilled zone. I guess maybe they wanted to have like a breather before you got to like the end game, I guess. So I guess that's why it feels like so relaxing, but it's kind of like a weird level in general for where it is in the game. But it's just so catchy. It's almost like an advert, like this melody. Like you can just like hum it to yourself without realising.
Yeah, it's catchy. I think the reason I always say it doesn't really do much to me is because it's quite low key. Like when you hear like Green Hill, Spring Yard, Chemical Plant, Emerald Hill, like they're really bombastic tracks. Starlight isn't that. Starlight is just like, hey, you're running around, just you know, kind of like very. It's designed to be a lot more calmer, especially when you've just done Labyrinth Zone and you've got to then do Scrap Brain Zone. You know, one is very, very frustrating because of the water mechanics. The other one is brutally difficult. So it's kind of a different pace, and that's kind of the idea. It's meant to be more chill, you know, and yeah, it is weirdly catchy.
Yeah,
considering it is weirdly catchy. Well,
one thing I was going to do was go for more of like a string arrangement to be more in 70s disco. But when I got the like music box and the other synth lines, it just sounded a bit more like, didn't sound coherent.
Yeah.
So originally I had like a cello mirroring the bass guitar, and I had like a string section mirroring the clav.
Yeah.
But it just didn't. It just felt like a weird mashup. So it's kind of, I guess this is probably more of like an 80s kind of disco thing.
Yeah.
Was that more trying like synthesizer only kind of like grooves?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of the fun thing when you're trying to do like a cover of it and trying to find what works. I do definitely like a lot of the sounds used here because it gives me it just kind of sounds like what it would sound like now. Like I like that kind of, rather than going too, you know, I'm orchestral or like rocky.
It's like in the style of not trying to recreate. So I like to try and get like the analog feel. I used a lot of like heavy compression on all the elements.
Yeah.
And like kind of driving the signal as high as I can. and then reducing the output gain to try and give a bit of like fake analog warmth.
Yeah.
But then I also bust a lot of the signal to a reverb, say reverb bust, and then used an exciter on top of that.
Yeah.
So like the reverb is very, very like high pitch, like it's very top end.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of helps to give it that kind of like 70s vibe as well. Then so it kind of like scoops a bit of the middle out of it.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I definitely like it. So it's a nice version of it where it's like everything's kind of got a nice place. There's certain things going on.
Yeah,
now.
I toyed with making it minor, but then it just didn't feel the same.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, I kind of want this to like. It's that toss up of like trying to get. Wouldn't it be similar enough so like people listening to it are like, oh, that's Starlight Zone.
Yeah,
but then you don't want to be like, that's just Starlight Zone.
Yeah.
it's like trying to like find like the goalpost between those two camps. Like trying to like.
No, definitely.
But yeah,
definitely.
I just doubled down to cheesy camp disco.
No, I mean it works. It works really well. Like especially go back and listen to it, or have a listen to it when it's up on the is a lot of the drums going on. Give it that very disco-y, especially it's like it's like
it goes to like almost like a Daddy Cool or like the call. I guess what would be the chorus bit. I ended up putting like a tom beat on rather than like the hi-hat.
Yeah,
and it gives it a bit of like urgency to the track.
Yeah, pushes it along.
Because I found a lot of the time, if I tried to do too much, I added a couple of feels before, but they didn't feel right because they didn't feel like they had enough space because there's so much melody on top of the drums. The drums don't have a lot of space in this. So it's like I kept it kind of like trimmed back, but then when the chorus happens, the lead synth comes in to double the main synth, so there's like a lot more high end.
Yeah,
and then reducing the high end of the drum kit kind of gives it like a foundation. So it feels like it's progressing and then relaxing and progressing and relaxing rather than like staying the same.
Yeah.
So that's like the only real kind of like 90s rock that still kind of carried on from the original idea.
Yeah, no, it works. It works really well. Like it sounds, like I said, it sounds how I would imagine it would sound now if they were doing it. But it's the nice thing about that track as well. It's not too I mean, it might be compositionally, but it doesn't sound too complex. So you can kind of just let the track do its thing.
Yeah, there's some weird timings where a lot of the notes kind of happen before the bar.
Yeah,
which makes it kind of hard to like transpose like super easily. It's a really interesting track. Like I didn't realise how much depth there was there. But I guess, oh god, I was about to say about the Mega Drive audio hardware. There's quite a few channels, I believe, in the original one.
Yeah, it's 16-bit in it, so it probably had
6 channels.
6 to 8 channels, I think. I should know.
I think it's 6 channels, and then there's like 3 for the drums. I think so. I think 8 channels in total. I think.
Yeah,
I believe. Don't quote me on that, but
let's have a look.
Looking at like the original MIDI, there's like a surprising amount of variation to it, which I wasn't really expecting.
6 channels, I believe, is the chip that's in there. Looking at it, which is plenty for what they're going to it for. Which is good. I mean, that's the thing. One thing I've noticed when you listen to Sonic the Hedgehog music specifically is there's like a lot of it. There's a lot less on the percussion and a lot more on the melody and harmonies and other things like that going on. Because obviously they had limited.
I'll be really interested to know if this guy knew who Rage Against the Machine were and stuff. They must have been like early 90s as well, late 80s, I think, that's when they started.
Yeah.
All that kind of like hip hop influence. So a lot of like Sonic music is like da 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 da. Like it's very much like the two sides. You have like a lot of staccato and then like a separate melody to it.
Yeah.
It's like even like Scrap Ray, like like it's very much like staccato and then like a leading over like melody afterwards.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of that idea. So that seems to be like the kind of the main vibe of like Sonic games. I feel like if you kind of like have that in it, you can kind of make it feel like a Sonic game.
Yeah, like that's it, and it's the early games anyway, or like a lot of the 2D ones or the side scrollers have a very different feel to the newer ones because they went for like kind
I
of.
guess maybe
cheesy
I'm
rock,
being unfair with Radiance Machine. I think it's just that entire funk rock
Yeah,
movement that was happening. I think he was trying to catch that. So a lot of Sonic games sound more like, or Sega games sound more like Cameo,
yeah,
and more 80s funk, like
Yeah,
Streets of Rage and stuff.
Oh hell yeah!
Whereas Sonic to me always sounds a bit more like Faith No More,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, a lot of those kind of vibes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That kind of like
Even like My Name Is Mud,
Primus.
Primus and stuff like that. It's got that kind of more funk rock to it.
Yeah, be interesting to look up actually what his influences are.
Yeah, I'd
but-
be interested to know. There's not a lot of information. I did a lot of research, but there's a couple of interviews, but there's not really like. This is a problem though. There's a lot of music stuff. This
Yeah.
is a side tangent for me, but a lot of the times when you listen to like, oh, there's a documentary about the making of this album, they never actually talk about making the music. They just talk about the studio.
Yeah,
So, I was in the studio and I did like 19 takes of this guitar piece. But they never talk about. Well, when we came up with the chord progression, we were basing on working around like D minor or something. They never talk about actually making music.
yeah.
They always talk about like the process of recording, which is something that really annoys me. Because they talk about him making this music and like him using the technology and stuff. But they never say like why he composed this or like what
Yeah,
he was
what-
trying to represent.
Yeah.
Like how he was taking the visuals and making it into audio, which is something this is a pet peeve of mine with
So-
like music documentaries.
Not to go too wildly off topic, but I do know that when Koji Kondo, the guy that does the Mario and Zelda music, he was watching the gameplay of Mario, and that theme that everybody knows was designed to be very jumpy, because that's the process of the game. So I know that like there's interviews with him talking about how his inspiration comes around. Same with like David Wise, the guy that does Donkey Kong. Like there are interviews of him talking about. Yeah, these are the I was coming up with these ideas and stuck them all together or whatever. So there is some of that out there, but I feel like
Oh yeah, but that's still not talking about like how the music is formed. If you know what I mean, like the direct like how they compose. So they talk about the bigger ideas.
yeah,
This is just a pet peeve of mine. Like I've watched quite a few documentaries about bands and stuff. They never talk about actually the music. They just talk about like where they were recording and like,
everything else around. Yeah.
who was there and stuff. It's like, I want to know how you made that melody. Like, I want to know how you made that chord progression. Like,
yeah. Just sometimes they just forget that it's like maybe it's a basic thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Do you want to
yeah.
play yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to give a little bit of background, I know I've already said this is heavily inspired by Chemical Plant Zone. I guess this would be my rendition of it.
I mean, that is like probably the best piece of music from Sonic 1 or 2.
One and two have to be fair, 1, 2, and 3 are like in my terms of soundtracks. They like, and even Knuckles, Sonic and Knuckles. I think it has Flying Battery in it, which is a fantastic piece of music. But Chemical Plant Zone is like the gold standard of just it. To me, not only does it work really well with the visuals, it just has a feel that no other Sonic track has, and I'm just like, yeah, it's super cool. So what I tried to do with Mech Factory is essentially, originally before I did anything to it, it was a very standard. You're going to hear a lot of influences of the bass, a lot of the chords that are stabbing in this, very similar to Chemical Plant. What I then did was add some effects and things. I'll go over more of that after we've listened to it, but just know that it's going to sound, maybe it's going to sound a little bit compressed on some of the instruments and stuff. That is all intentional to try and get it to sound, rather than be super clean, I'm trying to get it to sound a bit more like it's from that era of the Mega Drive and stuff. But
yeah, it's the usual problem where you're trying to ape analog
yeah,
in a completely digital medium.
yeah.
It's always a trade-off there.
Alright, so here we go then. Let's what I'll do, you'll hear a note and then I need to like stop it and start it so you can hear it at the beginning. So let's just stop this, bring it back, and 3, 2, 1, let's go. Right.
Nice.
So it obviously loops.
Hmm.
But yeah, so interesting thing was like when you listen to Chemical Plant is, I believe, the entire loop is 1 minute and 20 seconds. I could be wrong.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Looking at the tracks before choosing Starlight Zone, they all seem to be between like a minute 20 and about a minute 40. Like
Yeah.
there's not much variation there.
So for me, I was listening to Chemical Plant. It's basically broken into 3 parts. Intro, melody comes in, and then that bit at the end. So I was like, right, that's what I'm going to try and do. Try and get it to be about a minute 20, roughly. Mine's a bit goes over that, but that's kind of what I was aiming for. Something I also realised, there is no kick drum in that track in the Chemical Plant. So when I was making this, you can probably, if you break the track down, you'll hear that it's very similar to the underground drum beat from Super Mario Brothers. Basically, not intentionally. It's
It
just
does
that.
seem to be a thing, yeah. Same with Starlight Zone. There's no snare or kick in the music at all.
So Chemical Plant only has a hat and a snare, I believe, is what they were going for. There is no. The kind of the hi hat plays essentially what would be the bass drum, I think.
I guess it's a similar thing where like they just have 2 tracks for drums, and then I guess like 4 for like the melody.
I think it's easier to play the hi hat, isn't it? Because it's easier to go with noise channels, and it is probably like a low bomb when you've already got.
Especially also like seeing the TVs back in the day.
Yes,
you weren't really gonna have the bass response anyway from.
Yeah. So there was a couple things in this track. So firstly, the snare drum didn't used to sound like that. I actually put some distortion on it and got a real like boom sound, and I was like, I really like how that sounds, so I kept that in. And then I also added a lot of. I tried to bit crush a lot of the stuff in this, or at least the drums. I tried to compress and get the drums to sound a bit crunchy, because I was like, well, they sound too clean. That was the problem, and I was like, no, they need to sound a bit more crunchy. So that was one of the things.
It gives the drums like an analogy warmth.
Yeah.
What I really like about the drums, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the drums sound like they're all from separate like takes or like separate channels.
Yeah.
Like it sounds a lot like that technique. I know Joy Division did it for their music, where you record the drums 1 drum at a time.
Yeah.
So you play the entire kick drum for a song. And then you do another take with just snare and stuff like that. It sounds like that, where like they sound very spaced.
Yeah.
And like independent, which I really like.
It's something that like I just kind of do. Like, so where I work, when anytime I'm using like MIDI drums and stuff, is I always had them on separate tracks. So I use Logic, so I use them in separate tracks. I tend to try to make them sound a little bit separated, just so that when it comes to mixing, I've got more control over it. Now, obviously, you want them to sound together like a drum kit. What I tend to do normally, if I was making just a straight up drum beat and everything, I normally do a little bit of panning on like hi-hats on the hat and on crashes and stuff. There's no crashes in this one, but to try and get the drums to almost be like an what I call like a semicircular shape. So you've kind of got like a semicircle of sound where the drums are. But I think in this, I think the reverb I used on this really kind of spaced them out. It was unintentional.
I really like it. Like, it's a cool idea. I might try, because what I normally do is just normally do it all in 1 track.
Yeah.
And then to try and like ape a real person playing it.
Yeah.
That's what I try and do. But then also what I normally use then is sometimes I use like a spacer just to like give it a bit more like spread in the mix. And then obviously like compression and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked that. It gave it like a very Sega feel.
Yeah, that's why I was trying so hard.
Feels right to the piece.
I was trying really hard to get, because when you listen to a lot of these tracks, like trying to get it to sound crushed enough, like, because obviously I don't want it to be like completely crushed. I'm not looking to be exactly like the Mega Drive, but enough to really make it sound that it's more in that vein. That's what I'm going for, kind of thing, because it was too clean. That was the problem I had with this track.
That's just the problem with like digital versions of like 80s technology. Like it just doesn't really work. It's the same with like when they upgrade video games to being HD and it makes all the pixels far too crisp. And
It's like, ooh.
It just doesn't work. Like you need the sound to sound a bit filthy and half broken to make it kind of feel like it's part of the
That was absolutely
experience.
something I was going for. So, like, for example, as well, like, everyone knows Sonic has that kind of, like, I don't have a better term for it, but that kind of, like, wet, farty bass noise. Like, all the bass sound amazing in Sonic the Hedgehog.
It's all, like, you have, like, the wet, farty bass, and you have, like, the insanely gated snare.
Yeah.
And that's, like, the 80s music.
Yeah, and that's what was cool about it. So, like, when I did the bass, because obviously you can probably tell listening to the bass, it is very Chemical Plant, that donk, 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 like, very short notes. To start with, I tried to bit crush that. It didn't work. So what I ended up doing with that one was putting a bit of flange on it, and I kind of got it sounding a bit wetter than I wanted it. And I was like, actually, I didn't go too crazy with it, but I wanted the sound to be not as sharp and not as rough.
It feels like Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
Like their 80s stuff, and they started using a flange pedal on the bass. Dancing in the Moonlight, and those like where it's like there's flange there, but it's like a bit. It's used for effect, but doesn't go too crazy with the sine
obvious.
wave.
Yeah, and that was the other. And then lastly, when the main melody, so that I actually specifically put a filter on it to make it sound a bit not dissonant, but like a bit, for lack of a better term, a bit harder on the ears. Because again, it was too clean, and that was a brass. That's a fake brass sounding instrument.
It sounds quite hollow.
Yeah, I did chuck quite a bit of delay on it to try and get it to sound quite. It's the thing with Sonic music is the main melody generally will always be the loudest part, and I was trying to get it to really stick out, but I wanted it to kind of spread across the track. So I went with I think it was a stereo delay for it, but then I put a filter on it to give it a bit of a screech without being uncomfortable to listen to, but to give it a bit more of that, like, this is meant to sound, like you said, a bit dirty. And that's what I was trying to go for.
But also, like, I thought that was also intentional just for, like, the melody progression in Chemical Plant Zone.
Yeah.
That really high note that kind of, like, breaks the actual hardware.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And that high note is, like, even when you play it for, like, a real Mega Drive, like, it doesn't quite work, I think, with the actual sound card in it.
Yeah, no, I know. It definitely is a harsh note on the system,
but it sounds good because it's what gives it that, like.
Oh, it's what gives it that feel to that track.
Sense of, like, excitement and that sense of, like, out of control.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is what a lot of Chemical Plant is trying to, like, convey, is like a sense of, like, not being in control.
Yeah, Chemical Plant is such a unique thing within Sonic games. Like, there's not a stage that really looks or plays like it in that sense, and that's what the music's got, that craziness to it.
Yeah, because it toes the line, because most Sonic games are either like ancient ruins, a green field, or like a metropolis.
Yeah.
Whereas Chemical Plant is like the kind of like recycling centre, or like the kind of like waste disposal part of a city. Like, it doesn't have the same vibe as like Metropolis and Scrap Raid and stuff like that. Like, it is interesting where it kind of sits and the level feel.
It's a weird zone. And the last thing that obviously Chemical Plant's kind of known for, if you listen to the track, there's a lot going on in the sense you've got the main melody, you've got like the backing bit, you've got like another bit. Like there's a lot of things going on. So for part of this track, I added in this kind of like thing behind the main melody, and there is a slight dissonant note in there, but I think it quite works. But that was a lot of fun putting that together, because it's not as in your face, but when you listen to it, it comes in at the right time, it stays long enough, and then it doesn't outstay its welcome and it's gone again. And it's like, really listening to Chemical Plant and really listening to a lot of Sonic stuff, you realise when you're only working within 1 minute and 20 seconds, it is on you as the composer to make this track sound not only stick out, but also change enough over that 1 minute and 20 seconds so that it's not boring. And like, you can hear this with Starlight Zone. Starlight Zone's a bit shorter, but you have the main melody kicks in, it's quite chill, and then you have the ba-da-ba-da, like, there's always something coming in, and then it loops again quite quickly. So you kind of get that like drilled in. And the thing with Chemical Plant is you've got it's quite a hard hitting track, and obviously it starts off going like ba 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 ba. That's where I aped here, and then I was like, right, at every so many seconds, either the melody needs to be doing something new or something needs to be happening in the track, and that's kind of what I was trying to stick to when I was making this. Like, I'm really happy with how it's turned out. I think I could potentially go back and tweak some things, but when I hear it, I'm just like, cool. To me, at least it's got a feel of a Sonic the Hedgehog track, which is what I was going for.
It feels a bit more industrial.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Chemical Plant, but like, it certainly has a very, I guess, retro aesthetic is what you say. I guess.
Yeah, which is good.
Like, it feels like it is. Yeah, I can see where you're trying to like recreate.
Yeah.
Sounds.
The influence from Chemical Plant is really obvious in the bass, in the short stab kind of chords at the beginning, the heavy snare, and then the sort of breakdown at the end where you get the kind of like notes and stuff.
Yeah.
To me, this is my interpretation. Like, I actually did play this while watching Chemical Plant gameplay, and I was like, well, it's not really for me to decide, but if people are interested, I would recommend doing that, and then you can be like, okay, that's kind of... Or you could even put it over something like Metropolis Zone, Scrap Brain Zone.
That's true.
You know,
I guess the equivalent for me would be like those weird guy in a mask got outfits, Sonic adverts from the late 80s, early 90s. It'd be one of those where like Sonic is like outside Nintendo's like headquarters.
Yeah.
You can like play over that.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that's what we've done. I hope people have kind of, when they hear this, they'll enjoy that.
It's a bit self-indulgent, but I reckon this is quite a cool idea to try and express ourselves and maybe look a bit more into the music side of video games, because
it's overlooked.
These composers deserve a lot of cred. Yeah, they're really... So much of your nostalgia for video games is like the sounds, and like it doesn't get as fair a shake as like the graphics or like directors and stuff. Yeah.
And that's the audio is, I've said this many times before, but the music in a lot of games is what makes my love for a lot of video games, like why I enjoy them so much.
Especially retro.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think with retro, because there's like less visuals as well and less gameplay, I feel like the music has to convey more with less, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what, like, Sonic the Hedgehog, like at least the first 4 games. I mean, to be fair, I like most of the soundtracks for Sonic the Hedgehog, despite the quality of the games. But the original ones, a lot of that music is super iconic. Like, I might not be the biggest fan of Starlight, but it doesn't mean Starlight's any less iconic than the rest of the soundtrack. Like, each of those tracks from the first game, you can play them and people know what they are. Same with the second game, same with the third game. Like, those games have, because of the hardware and the people making their magic, they are some of the best sound. They made the most of that audio chip, and it's like...
Oh yeah, and you think there's also got to be like sound effects and other things running into it as well. Like, they do a lot with very little space.
Yeah, and it's impressive. And like we were saying, like Streets of Rage is another good example of a game that uses its sound fucking phenomenally. Really, what that chip does. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Like, we started it recently. I got really into it, and really excited to see what's coming. I mean, I think we've decided on what we're doing next.
Yeah, should we tease it?
Yeah, it's an RPG.
Yeah,
it's a very popular RPG franchise. And I think
I'm excited.
Yeah, I don't think we decided on a game. We might go for one of the games. We might do what we've done here and picked maybe potentially a couple of them, depending on what me and Fruity want to work on. But I already know what I want to do for it, and it's a lot of fun. And the cool thing about it is that with there being so many fucking games, like, it's not something that's going to run out any time. And also doing a lot of the retro stuff, it's a little bit easier to do. I wouldn't want to... There's some stuff that I wouldn't want to attempt.
Yeah,
but
and also the problem with a lot of modern games, it's just like classical compositions.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the kind of post-Halo games. It's just like, yeah, we get it. You want to be film composers, we get it. But like, I kind of want to just compose video game sounds rather than film scores. To be honest,
there's a lot of stuff we can pull from. At some point, and just to deconfirm it because it's not an RPG. Like, at some point, I want to have a stab at doing something Mario related. But I'm glad we started with Sonic. I think Sonic's a really good place to start.
Yeah, it's a benchmark that most of us know within our like demographic.
Yeah. and nothing's off the table. Like there will be stuff that either one of us will pick that the other one might not have much experience with, but it kind of makes it all the more exciting for us because we get to listen to those soundtracks, which is always a good excuse for that, and also push ourselves in directions that we maybe not have ever attempted before.
It's like an exercise for us as much as it is an exercise in. Yeah,
it's not just about creating like a final piece. It's more like, can we create something we're happy with? What ideas we come up with. Because, for example, like when I made Mech Factory, it's all digital. There's no analog sounds in there. If I think I can make something with the acoustic guitar, my electric guitar, whatever else, if I think I can do something that would be good enough, I will.
My original idea would be me playing drums, bass, and guitar.
Yeah,
but it just didn't pan out that way.
Yeah.
But that's also why I kept it so loose to being like covers or like music inspired by a game or like something that feels like a modern interpretation. Like I kind of kept it loose so you weren't confined by doing like just straight up covers or straight up like new versions of things. Like I want it to be as free and like creative as possible.
Yeah.
While giving us at least like a theme to work on.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important. It's like when we're picking the games and stuff, like obviously we have options within those games because most games have more than one song. But yeah, we're not trying to go, oh, I'm going to do this game and you do this game kind of thing. It's more like, hey, this series. We're never going to go outside. It's never going to be like I'm doing Mario and Fruity's doing fucking Zelda or something. It'll always be some constraint and confined on it.
Yeah,
and
kind of like the idea of at some point maybe doing like take a piece of music and then rewrite it for a different game.
Yeah,
but that's obviously quite a lot harder. Like more effort.
Yeah,
it would be cool to take like a Castlevania song and I do it in the style of like Mario or something, and I try and make like
that's interesting.
Try and make the minor work with like the Mario's like abundance of like
major keys.
Cheer, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's kind of cool. I mean, Castlevania is definitely something I'd like to tackle in the future, but my god, some of those tunes are complex. But yeah, I mean, like this has been super fucking fun, and I can't wait to crack on with the next one.
And I want to try and churn these out as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, like it. Also, something that's probably worth noting is what you guys might end up hearing in these videos might never get like a final version, because it's not necessarily about making this wonderful perfect piece of music. It might just be, here is the idea that I had, this is what I did, and this is like I'm happy enough with it.
I mean, it's creative idea. Sometimes your creative idea just doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
And maybe it would be like, I started this is way too ambitious. I don't have the time, this is as far as I got.
Yeah.
Like, this is just, it's what happens when you're trying to be creative and trying to try new things. That's something that doesn't work, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need to like judge that as like a bad thing. That's just how this works.
Yeah. And then that's why we're trying to with this particular idea that we've got here, is that sometimes you will get the finished product, sometimes you'll just get the idea. For us it's more okay, like I said, an exercise in doing this stuff, and then also like letting you guys hear, okay, does it sound like that? And make your own opinion on that, whether you think it works or not. But yeah, it's just meant to be fun and a great way of, like I said, pushing ourselves to try and do things that we haven't done before.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so if you've enjoyed this video, then hit the like button down there. If you want to see more content like this, hit subscribe. Obviously there's plenty of other stuff up on the channel, but this is something new, this is something fresh, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. This isn't going away.
No.
We're going to be doing this for a while.
Yeah, this is just something fun for us, and it's cool to share that. Links for Facebook and Twitter will also be down there if you want to get involved over there. Obviously,
are we going to make an OCV mix?
We probably will at some point.
Yeah, I feel like putting stuff up on there might be a good idea because legality issues.
Yeah, obviously that having those options is always nice. Obviously, if you want to, put some opinions or whatever down there about what we've done, and if you think that's, we've done a good job, or you think you would have done it in a different style, feel free to comment. you know, it's always interesting to see what other people think, if it does sound like that thing, or whether it's a cover, if you think it's a good cover. And yeah, I guess that's it for this video. So it's going to be goodbye from me for now, and it's going to be goodbye from this guy.
Goodbye.